Welcome to my video tutorial. Today we're going to be making a baby hoodie, and the first thing that we need to do, this is cake yarn by the way, and I'm using a 4mm hook. Now you can use cake yarn or Aran weight yarn, doesn't really matter, but cake yarn is nicer because it changes colour. So we're going to chain 61 to start. And then you're going to treble into the third chain from the hook and into the next 9 stitches. And then the next stitch we're going to do, some people call it a corner stitch, I call it a dividing stitch, is treble 1, chain 1 and treble 1 all into the same stitch, and then treble another 9 and then do another divide stitch, so treble, chain 1 and treble into the same stitch, and then for the back we'll treble 19 and then we'll do another divide stitch between the back and the arm, so treble, chain, treble into the same stitch, and then we're going to treble into the next 9 stitches, and another divide stitch, treble, chain, treble into the same stitch, and then just treble to the end of the row. And for the next row we're going to start with chain 3, and then we're going to do alternate back and front loop treble crochet, so back loop and front loop, back loop and front loop. And we'll just keep doing that until we get to the corner divide stitch, front, back, and there's the corner divide stitch, so we'll go into the front of the stitch there, and then we'll go into the corner stitch and treble, chain 1 and treble, and then whatever you ended on, so it was a front, then we'll go into the back of the next stitch, and then the front, back, front, and just keep working into the front and back of the trebles until you get to the end of the row, remembering to do the treble, chain treble into the divide stitches, and whatever you end on in the last stitch before the divide stitch, you start with the opposite on the other side. Of the third row, we're going to chain 3, and then whatever you did on the previous row, so that's a treble back one there, so we're going to do the opposite and treble forward into the front loop. Try again. Okay, and then the next one, it's a front, the front treble is dominant, so we'll do a back loop, and we'll just continue to do front and back loop treble, the opposite to the one that it looks like on this side. And then, as before, we're going to do treble 1, chain 1, treble 1 into the corner stitch. All fingers and thumbs today. So just continue working like that, and treble stitch, chain 1 treble stitch into each corner, and just continue to the end of the row. And we'll start the next row. Oh, looks like I need to finish the last row again. So treble into the turning chain and turn. And this row is going to be the same as the last row. We're going to look at whether the first stitch is a front or back loop treble, and this is prominent at the front, so we're going to go into the back of it, and then we're just going to alternate front and back for the rest of the row. And that is the pattern, and just continue working in the pattern until it measures about 4 inches. Okay, so now we're going to divide the body from the sleeves, so chain 3 and work in pattern up to the first divide stitch. And work into the last stitch before the divide stitch, and then you're going to insert the hook into the divide stitch, and then you're going to insert it into the next divide stitch. Sorry, forgot the chains. Insert into the divide stitch, double crochet and chain 4. Rookie error. Right, and now work into the next divide stitch and double crochet, and then continue to work in pattern. So that's going to be a back, so that needs to be a front. And just continue working in pattern until you get to the next divide stitch. So we'll just do the last stitch before the divide stitch, and we'll go into the divide stitch and double crochet, and then I'll remember to do the chain 4 this time. Chain 4 and across into the next divide stitch, and then pattern to the end of the row. And finish with a slip stitch into the turning chain, and we're just trebling into the turning chain and turn. And for this row we're just going to work in pattern and treble across the chains when we get to them. So we'll just work 4 trebles into the chains, and then we'll continue to work in pattern until we get to the next set of chains, which we'll treble across and then work to the end of the row in pattern. And in the next row you'll be incorporating those trebles into the pattern. So the next row, chain 3 and work in pattern until you get to the trebles that we put into the chains. And then we're going to incorporate them into the pattern. So I've just done a back loop stitch. I'm going to do a front loop stitch and then a back loop stitch, front loop stitch, back loop stitch. So here we have a front loop stitch. So let's go back. Ah, missed one. Front loop stitch, back loop, front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop, front loop and back loop, and just continue until you get to the next set of 4 trebles and just do exactly the same, and then that is the pattern. So continue working in pattern until the piece from the armholes to the bottom measures around 5 inches. Okay, so now we've done our 5 inches of this pattern, we're going to change to mock rib, and the first row we need to do is just a row of straightforward trebles. So miss the first treble and treble. Oh, forgot to mention, using a small hook, 3.5 millimeters, and just treble in each row across and end with a treble into the turning chain. And also bear in mind, this is the right side. The way you can tell it's the right side is because the tail is on the left, on the right side, and on the right, on the wrong side. So yeah, continue to treble across and then finish with a treble into the turning chain, and then we'll start the mock rib. So we've done the row of straight trebles, and now we're going to chain 3, and we're going to work around the back post of the first treble and around the front post of the next treble, and repeat that. Back post, and front post, back post, front post. You get the idea. So just continue doing that until you get to the end of the row and slip stitch into the turning chain, turn, and then we'll do the second and final row. Okay, so for the second and last row we're going to chain 3, and if the front post is sticking out we're going to crochet around the treble crochet around the front, and then if the treble crochets at the back we're going to treble crochet around the back and front, and back, and front, and back. And as you can see, it's going to create a nice rib effect for the bottom of the hoodie. So just continue until the end of the row, treble into the turning chain and fasten off. So that's the main part of the body finished, and the next thing we're going to do is rejoin the yarn to the middle of the lower armhole, and we're going to chain 3 and work a treble into the first space and the second space. And this is where we need to start picking up the pattern again. So we're just going to do a straight treble into that first stitch, and so that's a front, back. So we'll work into the front there, and into the back of the next one, because as you can see that's a front protruding, and into the front, and then into the back, and just keep doing that until you get round to the other side and join with a slip stitch. So we've done the first round of the sleeve, and the second round is very straightforward. It's just chain 3 and look back at the protrusion of the trebles, so front, back, front, back, front, back. So we're going to start with a back loop treble, and front loop treble, and just keep working round again until you get to the other end, and treble into the chain at the beginning of the first round, and just keep working in rounds until the sleeve measures approximately 6 inches. So we finished the sleeve apart from the border, so change to the small needle, the 3.5mm, chain 3, and just work 1 row in straight trebles. And just continue working straight trebles until you reach the other side and join with a slip stitch. And for the second row we're going to do the mock rib stitch as we did on the other border. So chain 3 and then go round the front post for the first stitch and the back post for the second stitch, front post and back post, and just continue until you get to the other end and finish with a slip stitch into the chain, turning chain. So for the last row for the sleeves, chain 3 and then treble around the front of the first stitch and the back of the next stitch, front and back, and just continue to do that until you get to the end, and then slip stitch into the turning chain and fasten off, and then we'll start on the hood. So the sleeves are done. I should have mentioned at the end of the last section that you need to do two, but then I thought it was probably quite obvious. And we're going to start the hood. Now we're back to the 4mm hook, and we're going to start. So here's the front, the left front, and we're going to start at the first corner stitch. So rejoin the yarn and chain one, and then double crochet into the first space and into the second space and into the third space, and what you're going to do is keep double crocheting until you reach the next corner space. Which is here. So another 2 double crochet and a double crochet into the corner space, and then we're going to do half trebles across the back. So keep doing half trebles until you get to the next corner space, and then when you get to the next corner space, double crochet into it, and then double crochet until you get to the next corner space, and that's where we're going to turn. Okay, so we've got a double crochet into the corner space, and we're just going to leave the front bit unworked, and then to go back I'm going to chain 2, and then we're going to half treble into the first part up until the corner, and half treble into the corner space, and then we're going to treble across the back. And then we're going to half treble into the corner space. Well, it's not a space anymore, but where it once was. And then we're just going to half treble to the end of the row and finish with a half treble into the last stitch. Okay, and now we're going to go back to the pattern. So the next row, chain 3 and go into the front loop of the first stitch and the back loop of the second stitch, just like we did with the main body of the cardigan. Front loop and back loop, front loop and back loop, and just continue working in that stitch as you did for the body until this part measures 7 to 7.5 inches. Okay, so now we've finished crocheting the hood. We're just going to use the tail of the yarn to sew the top of the hood. So I'm going to use the over stitch method to sew it. I hate sewing. I think I've said that in most of my videos, but sometimes it has to be done. So just continue sewing until you get to the end, and at this point, before we start the border, the front border and the hood border, it might be a good idea to weave in all your ends. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the cardigan back to the right way round. And we're going to join the yarn to the left corner of the border, the left front, sorry, it's the right front. And then I'm going to chain 3 and then we're just going to work a treble into each stitch. And just continue trebling into each stitch until you get to the top here. So for the second border row, we're going to do mock rib. So begin with a chain 3 and crochet around the front post for the first stitch and crochet around the second post for the next stitch, and just do that for alternate stitches, front post and back post, and just keep doing that until you get to this edge here. So finish with a treble into the last stitch and then double crochet into the side of the row, and then double crochet again into the side of the row, double crochet into the stitch in between, and then double crochet up to the beginning of the hood border. And then slip stitch, chain 3, and front post crochet around the first stitch, and back post crochet around the next stitch. Front post, back post, and just continue repeating that until you get to the other side, the other end of the hood border. And then we'll just slip stitch into the corner, chain 1, and then double crochet across the previous double crochets. And into the last two double crochets. And then chain 3. And again, we're going to work mop rib by travelling around the front post of the first stitch and back post of the following stitch, and just working those alternately until you get to the bottom of the hoodie. So just slip stitch into stitch between the hood and the body, and then treble, front post treble around the first stitch, treble, back post treble around the next stitch, front post treble, and back post treble, and just keep doing that until you get to the other side of the hood. And right, next we'll slip stitch into the bit between the hood and the top, and we'll double crochet along the top, and 2 stitches, and then we'll chain 3 and work a front post treble and back post, and just keep alternating until the end of the row, and then slip stitch into the chain at the end. And I'll see you there. So we'll start the last border row now. 3 chains and front post treble and back post treble, and just continue with that until you reach the corner again. So I've just trebled into the chain, and now we're going to work a slip stitch 2 across the chain and then into all the double crochets. And then we're going to double crochet into the last one, and then front post double crochet into the hood border, and back post treble crochet. Why do I keep saying double crochet? And back post and front post, back post, front post, and just continue working away around the hood, and I'll see you on the other side. So we've got to the other end of the hood. We're now going to slip stitch into space in between and into every double crochet across the top. And slip stitch into all the double crochets along the top. And then chain 3 and work a back post treble crochet and a front post treble crochet, back post, and I think by now you know the rest, and just continue to the end and treble into the chain. So now we've finished. All that remains to do is to sew on some buttons on whichever side you want to. The beauty of this kind of rib is that you can push buttons through without actually having to make buttonholes, so you don't need to actually create the buttonholes. And that's the hoodie finished.